We do expect everybody to be here tonight, so we're just going to wait a couple more minutes. Milford, we're going to ask you to give a report on what you did for lunch today. Milford and I attended the Highland Chamber luncheon today. Highland. Hmm. All right, Lynette, are our screens supposed to be up? Oh, there they go. Okay, good evening. We're going to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, as soon as you are ready, go ahead and do the roll call.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. I will take roll. Councilwoman Spencer Wong. Councilman Popescu.
Here.
Councilman Rigsby.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly.
Present.
Mayor Duper.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had no closed session this evening. We're going to move into the invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Popescu.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us to serve this community. We ask that you bless us and provide knowledge and wisdom as we make decisions on behalf of the city and its residents and everyone else that's involved. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. City Manager, are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
At this point, we would welcome anybody from the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized item. Milford, this is where you can give that report on that chamber luncheon. No, I don't. I'm just kidding. If anybody in the public does wish to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one, we're going to move on to our scheduled items. First item is 2A, and this is information on the review of revenue options, a potential implementation of some type of revenue generation. Mr. City Manager, I'm assuming you're going to take this.
Yes, our finance director, Sonia, will present.
Sorry, Sonia.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff, and members of the public. I'm Sonia Fabella, Finance Director for the City of Loma Linda. At the April 9, 2024 City Council meeting, Council requested more information regarding the revenue generating ideas that were presented at the workshop dated March 13, 2024, and for staff to research what is entailed in the process of a voter-approved revenue measure. At times, I will defer to the City Attorney, Diane Robbins, for her legal and technical guidance. The City of Loma Linda is facing a financial crisis. During the fiscal year 23-24 mid-year review at the February 13, 2024 meeting, staff presented estimated revised revenues of $26.9 million and revised expenditures of $27.3 million, with an estimated ending operational deficit of $490,200. Throughout the years, the City Council has taken fiscally prudent and responsible approach to having a balanced budget by maintaining assigned and committed reserves for emergencies and capital equipment replacement. During this, reducing the city's workforce, eliminating or reducing programs such as the dismissal of senior center staff, deferring repairs and maintenance wherever possible and adding them back as funds were available, and identifying and securing additional revenues such as emergency medical services program and by updating the city's fee study. Currently, the budget for fiscal year 24-25 seems to be balanced. However, not all estimates have been entered as the city is still under employee negotiations and the share of contract amount has not been obtained. During the March 13 budget workshop where City Council, city staff, the budget and planning committees, city employees, and members of the public attended, the following ideas were collected. The staff report includes notes on almost all items suggested, and they're available on the city's website for tonight's agenda. The taxes suggested were a parcel tax, district tax, which we will learn more about tonight, utility users tax, which the city did adopt in '94, collected revenues for 1995 and '96, but did not continue to collect. Also suggested was an increase to transaction occupancy tax, which I'll call TOT for short, and it's currently at 10%. The city has 5 businesses that are currently paying TOT. Allowing Airbnbs is another option to collecting TOT, increasing sales tax by allowing cannabis dispensaries, lifting the ban on drive-thrus, and lifting alcohol restrictions, as well as working with Loma Linda University to update or add amenities that provide entertainment for staff, students, and visitors was also suggested. Additional suggestions were increasing or adding new fees, such as the ones listed in the second column. Applying for federal, state, and local grants is on the third column. Grants require additional staff to apply, track, and manage. Please note that grants would be considered a special or a capital revenue, whereby they would need to be tracked in separate funds, and they would possibly not be allowed to be used for operational purposes. And finally, cost reductions by outsourcing services and controlling costs. This is something that has certainly been practiced, and each department contributes by working outside of work scope, taking care of city resources and equipment, and working together as a team for the good of the citizens. During the last meeting, Council requested additional information regarding the revenue measure. A revenue measure is being proposed to secure the city's long-term financial stability to maintain public safety and essential city services for our residents and businesses. It would change the current sales tax rate by 1% if that's the percentage that's decided, which is equal to 1 cent on every dollar spent on taxable goods used within the city. Based on an estimate prepared by the city's sales tax consultant, it would generate an estimated $7.9 million each year in dedicated, locally controlled funds. Locally controlled funds means that the city will receive the full percentage proposed for the voter-approved measure. Of Loma Linda's 7.75%, the state takes 6% of the revenue, the county takes 0.75%, 25% of that is for transportation, and the city only keeps 1% of the Bradley Burns sales tax. To put it in dollars, the updated estimate for the city's sales tax revenue from the sales tax consultant for fiscal year 23-24 is $10 million. That means the state will receive an estimated $60 million, the county will receive $7.5 million, whereas the city will only receive $10 million of that $77 million sales tax paid by residents, visitors, and other businesses purchasing from point of sale businesses within the city. Currently, the cities and counties are collecting a 1% tax called Bradley Burns Uniform Local Sales and Use Tax. 1% is allocated to cities and 0.25 is allocated to the counties for transportation. District taxes are taxes imposed under the Transactions and Use Tax Law. The TUT, which we'll call for short, is adopted in 0.125% increments up to a max of 2% that is combined with the county. As previously mentioned, district tax is imposed under the Transactions and Use Tax Law and can be found in the Revenue and Taxation Code 7251. It must be approved by the voters. It is imposed on tangible goods, and the tax is allocated with the goods. The goods are delivered and placed into use regardless of the point of sale. This means that the point of sale businesses that reside in Loma Linda do not have to collect a TUT on goods that are shipped or used outside of the city. This chart looks a little bit busy, but it has been added for reference and to help further understand how the sales and use tax differs from the transactions and use tax based on type of business and location, and how the taxes are allocated to each jurisdiction. Sales tax is allocated to the city where the business or point of sale is located, whereas the transactions and use tax is allocated based on the place of use. As previously mentioned, a 1% TUT is equivalent to 1 cent per every dollar spent. Although the tax is applied to goods, not all of them are taxable. Sales and use tax and transactions and use tax are not applied to groceries, prescriptions, medical services, dental services, real estate or rent, education, utilities, personal services, or labor. In this chart provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the CPI is presented for all urban consumers in the Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ontario area. CPI is a measure of the average change in prices over time in a fixed market of goods and services. The CPI has gone from 3.6 in March of 2021 to 10.0 in March of 2022 and back down to 4.3 in March of 2024 for all items. The city certainly felt this change in the past couple of years as contractual service agreements based on the CPI increased, as well as population increase and extending the deferral of maintenance. Part of the process of deciding on a tax measure is whether it will be used for general governmental use or specific project-based use that requires an expenditure plan. The process is similar for both, and they require a 2/3 vote from council. A general election is one where city council is up for election or re-election. The city's general election was March 5th. If council decides to put a measure on the ballot and let voters decide and vote on the measure this November 5th, it will be considered a special election as no council will be up for election. A general tax also requires a separate vote to declare a fiscal emergency so that it can be consolidated in a special election. In order for the general purpose tax measure to be passed, it requires a majority vote, whereas the special purpose tax requires 2/3 voter approval. The steps to place the TUT on a ballot are listed on this slide. The adoption of a resolution declaring a fiscal emergency and ordering submission of the measure to be included in a general, but in this case, a special election on November 5th. Adoption of a resolution setting priorities for filing impartial written arguments by the city attorney. Resolution providing for arguments and rebuttal arguments in favor and against the tax measure. And adoption of an ordinance relating to the proposed tax measure if approved by the voters. The last day to submit these adopted resolutions to the San Bernardino Registrar of Voters is August 9th. This is an estimated timeline. Dates still have to be verified as the simplified calendar has not been posted by the San Bernardino Registrar of Voters. This slide shows the tax rates for surrounding cities. The rates are obtained from California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. As you can see, Ontario, Colton, Redlands, San Bernardino, Riverside, Montclair, and Chino all have adopted a district tax. I would like to note that Chino's rate still shows a 7.75 in the CDTFA website, as their voters recently approved a 1% TUT during the March 5th general election with a 60.1% voter approval. We're almost done at the end of this presentation. It should be noted that council does not have the authority to adopt a sales tax measure, only the voters do. The city is facing a fiscal emergency with inflation, rising costs, and potential additional state mandates in the future. The city manager, with the support of city staff, has been prudent in spending. Our workforce is made up of highly trained professional employees that serve our residents every day. The fiscal year 23-24 personnel costs in the general fund are estimated to reach $9.4 million. As was mentioned in the previous meeting, 3 positions that were approved in the 23-24 budget were not filled. Going forward, it is necessary to hire more employees and alleviate the shortfall in maintaining city services. It is necessary to prepare responsibly for the future as we prepare for the 24-25 budget. And as we prepare for the budget, it will be necessary to reduce cost. That is why identifying and securing additional revenues is so important. Tonight, you have been presented with steps necessary to place a measure on the ballot. A timeline has been identified, and I have placed a presentation from the League of California Cities on the do's and don'ts of ballot measure activities and public resources for your review. Staff will also receive a copy. The 2 remaining tasks are for staff to seek out the viability of a revenue measure and provide a timeline and contents to educate Loma Linda residents and businesses on a proposed measure. Staff is seeking direction to further research revenue options for the city of Loma Linda, specifically transactions and use tax. Staff is prepared to consult with professional firms that have worked on revenue measures placed on the ballot in San Bernardino County during recent election cycles. If so directed, staff will return to City Council with the results of its findings upon its completion, which is expected late next month or early June. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. That was very, very thorough and extensive. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Dr. Daly?
If I understood correctly, I think you said there are 10 businesses that currently collect TOT?
5 businesses.
How many?
5,
5.
yes.
I'm surprised. Help me understand TOT better than I do, because we've got more than 5 businesses that,
It's TOT versus TUT.
It's transaction occupancy tax, and it's hotels.
Oh.
I said businesses because
okay,
one is motel and the rest are hotels.
that clarifies it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a couple of questions to help us understand the transactional tax. And you listed a bunch of things that aren't included in that, such as groceries and whatnot. So when you did the analysis and the consultant came back with that 7.9 million, what are the things that would be taxed?
Anything that's related to goods such as clothing, furniture.
So we're talking about like the major businesses, such as like the dealerships and things like that, correct?
Correct.
Um,
And clothing, regular goods that you use every day, hairspray, shampoos, lotions, things like that. Consumer
So-
goods.
So you would pay for those things at the grocery store. You just wouldn't pay for that in terms of like groceries. That you
Right.
purchase.
It's actual groceries. Food items are not taxable.
What else? What were the other ones? Do you remember offhand or no?
The non-taxable?
No, the taxable. Would
Um,
this apply to our deal with Mansfield and?
No, it would not, because Mansfield is a point of sale. And so all of the sales that they do are to outside businesses.
What
And,
about-
and the transaction use tax is based on the place of use. So any goods that are used within the city of Loma Linda, delivered to the city of Loma Linda. So like all the brick and mortar stores.
What about Amazon?
Amazon would, because goods are being delivered to Loma Linda. Whereas currently, they're being distributed to the place where, well, sales tax is being distributed to the place where the warehouse is located.
So just to confirm that, so any transaction we do with Amazon, for the most part, all that tax is paid outside, except in this case, we would get 1 cent that would come back into the city.
Correct.
So we don't capture any of that Amazon sales that go into
Not
that.
right now, unless it's in an unincorporated area, then it would go into the county's pot, and then they would distribute it out. But we would only get a small fraction of that.
I know we talked about the fact that we were able to balance this year's budget, and we talked about not filling a couple of positions. I know at last year's city manager review, we all unanimously directed the city manager to hire additional people to take all the extra duties off of him and some of our other department heads, correct? And have we hired any of those people?
No.
Why is that? Because you're trying to balance the budget. So you're failing in your review then, because you haven't hired the people we told you to hire. Okay. How many vacancies are we running right now in this city? Do you know?
Right now, I just have one because we terminated that position, but we're going to refill that position. So, but again, we have been working very thin margin for the employees right now. So we need more staff to do work. So.
I would ask the sheriff's department, but I know they don't know, because I don't know either what the contract increase is going to be either. We won't know that till Thursday.
This week.
Thursday. This week, Thursday.
I think the vacancies is worse than what JARB is letting on. Like, you can't just look at the vacancies. You have to look at how many people are filling multiple positions. That's not sustainable. I mean, we have many people filling 3, 4 positions, JARB himself. So it actually looks worse when you dig down and see one person is doing that many jobs. It's not sustainable.
So when I said vacancy, I think you mentioned, or you were thinking positions that were actually being held. But we, again, gave direction about a year ago to hire additional positions to cover some of these things, partly because we also noticed that some things were maybe falling through the cracks a little bit in terms of, and that's not anybody's, it sounds bad when I say this, and I don't mean it to sound bad like that. It's just, you guys are all juggling way too much, and that was identified that we've got to figure out a better way to do business. Any other comments? What's the general feeling up here?
I guess my question is that when we discussed this in closed session a couple weeks ago, one of the recommendations from Rhonda was that we establish a.
Hold on a second, Ron.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I had a question just for
Yes,
clarity.
sir.
As far as revenue, you mentioned rent. Does that apply just to household rent, or does that apply to, like, if you rent a car, is there a sales tax associated with that?
It's only household rent.
Okay.
Rental leases, like for cars, would apply. Transactional use tax would
So
apply.
what about if you store a car and you pay for the storage of that car? Would that be considered?
No, that's more of a service.
Okay.
So service isn't taxable.
Okay. And then you mentioned that personnel costs was this last year
9.4 million
9.4.
for the general fund.
Okay. And then last question. You said that Mansfield sales receipts, majority of it does not apply because it's being used outside the city.
Correct.
So any revenue that we get from them is because they're using it in the city? Because we are getting some revenue from them.
They're a point of sale within the city, so they collect Bradley Burns sales tax.
Okay, so we do generate sales tax within the city,
Correct.
but there's
However,
even more that's not collected.
the transactions and use tax, if it's adopted, it will not apply to the majority of their sales because they're shipped out from the city.
So I guess what you're saying is that it doesn't generate any more revenue for us if we adopt it. I follow you. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
This is not necessarily a public hearing, is it? Or is it a public hearing? We can entertain comments from the audience also, correct?
Certainly.
Anybody wishing to speak about this? I know we've heard a lot from some of you already. Now I'm confused. Is this about the luncheon or is this?
I'm over the luncheon.
I was over it at 11 o'clock.
It was an excellent luncheon, whereas our mayor's boss gave a good talk about the city of Highland and what's happening in the city. Primarily, he proposed, or he supported and asked that we support the amendment to Prop 47, which is just killing us from a law enforcement standpoint and from a business standpoint. Anyway, I think that there are, I'm not sure that I understand everything that Sonia said, and that's not because she didn't say it well. It's just that I haven't had a chance to I wasn't aware of the workshop, and I haven't had a chance to study up on some of these. The transient, and I think it's transient occupancy, not transaction occupancy tax.
Yes, correct. Transient occupancy tax.
Transient, right. I think that's an area, and I don't know what the relationship or the discussions with the owner of 4 of our hotels has been, but I just took a trip in Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania, and there's not anybody of those charging 10% transient occupancy tax. It's at least 12, and some of them are as high as 19%. That and the car dealerships should be and have been. The car dealerships have been an excellent source of revenue for this city from the first one that we got, which was Spring Honda. The sales tax increase would help those substantially. I think the other thing that we need to do is look at ways of supporting more business in town. I think that we're missing a bet when we're not providing for alternate land use restrictions relative to the Redlands Boulevard freeway corridor. I mean, this is the center of town, and we need to protect this, and we need to watch what we do here. But that freeway corridor and the Redlands Boulevard corridor are basically a separate part of town. It's almost like a different town down there. And I think that it certainly would be appropriate to look at drive-throughs, to look at adding the possibility of beer and wine, so we could get a hotel with that would have nice restaurants or have restaurants attached to it, and those type of things. And I think that would certainly be appropriate for that corridor. Obviously, we don't want that for Barton Road, but I really think it's certainly a question that should be answered, and I think considered favorably. Thanks.
I have a question. Can somebody explain the taxing on car dealerships? Because I've heard all kinds of rumors about if someone from Ontario buys a car in Loma Linda, the sales tax goes to Ontario. And what's the difference between the Bradley Barnes and the transactional tax with regard to car taxation?
Yes, the Bradley Burns tax is collected by all local agencies in California. It's 1%, and it's based on the place where the item is purchased. So we get a 1% of all car sales that take place in Loma Linda. The transactions and use tax is based on the location of use. So if a Loma Linda resident went to Ontario and purchased a car there, the car would then be registered to the resident in Loma Linda. Loma Linda would receive a 1% transactions and use tax. We don't receive the Bradley Burns sales tax, but we would receive the transactions and use tax.
So in other words, nobody from Loma Linda could go anywhere else in California and buy a car and escape the 1% tax that we levy.
If it's adopted by the voters.
And we would get the money because they would pay 1% extra for their car anywhere in the state.
Yes.
Okay.
Clarifying regarding Airbnbs, you said they're not allowed, or did you meant to say we're not collecting TOTs on them?
If Lorena can help me out with this one, I'm not quite.
They're technically.
Okay, so they are allowed.
No, they're technically not allowed.
Oh, really? So we have an ordinance.
But they are occurring here.
Ah, okay, I didn't know that. Okay. And if we allowed them, then they become like a hotel, and we would therefore charge the TOT. Is that what I'm hearing? Someone's two different.
Airbnbs would be considered short-term rentals, which are currently not allowed in our development code. So, and probably Sonia would know, but if we did permit them, I would assume that we can get the transient occupancy tax from them.
Yes, we could.
Okay.
And it's collected on short-term rentals, so anything under 30 days would be, the TOT would apply.
Would that tax be charged to the corporate Airbnb or to the individual?
I'm not exactly sure how Airbnb
Homeowners.
works, but I would assume that they would collect that tax from the person renting the Airbnb. And then they would have to remit that to the city.
I don't know how their revenue stream works. I imagine whoever gets the money would be
They would have to
required to submit the tax.
submit.
What I imagine is that probably the folks that are operating here in town, and I know at least of 3 of them you can Google right now, are not paying any taxes because we don't allow that type of business. So therefore, they probably would not be real happy if our code enforcement went out there and talked to them at this point. Since they're not allowed, I guarantee they're not paying IRS taxes either. But if we did allow them, then potentially we could set up a system where we did collect and we would enforce based on the fact that they would have to comply. And unfortunately, a simple search right now would show you that they do occur here. And what we want to do with that's a whole other question in the interim.
And Mr. Mayor, to add to that, we would probably be collecting a use permit application fee as well as business license fees.
Anybody else? All right. What does this council think?
Is this agendized as an information item?
Yes, but also that I need direction to see if the council wants that item number 4.2. And then after we find out.
Jarb, I think your microphone's not on.
Sorry. After we find out from the polling, public outreach, education, to see how many people that we survey will vote yes on this. And then the city council has to come back and approve to see if we will declare a fiscal emergency so that we can put on the ballot. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So if we approve the agenda item to consider putting this on a ballot.
No, not yet.
No, we're not.
So that's my question is, what are the next steps? What do we need to do tonight, and what are the next steps following that?
You want to show that slide again?
So in speaking with the staff a little bit on this, I think what they're looking for is a little bit of leeway to spend some time doing some research and polling to see where this stands. Am I correct? And so they would like to know, first off, if there's a will for us to move forward with exploring this. And then the second thing is they want to test where the community is at on this. So when it comes back for us for an actual vote on that matter, we have more of an understanding of what the community is willing to do. Is that correct, Diane?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that all sounds fine, but how this kind of an issue is framed to voters makes a huge difference. So when we talk about surveying the community to see how they feel about it, how does that work? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, either we put it up to the voters, we frame it the way we think is honest and appropriate, and then let them vote. So what, I'm not understanding the interim steps.
Part of what council is, or what staff is asking for direction on is the ability to discuss this with consultants. And what they do is they go out into the community and ask the community what is important to them. Where do they see that there's needs and such like that. So, and then they get a feel for whether the residents would support moving forward. And so we look into that in the areas that are of concern to, not we, but the consultants, look into that and see what things are important to the residents. And then that's the information we come back and discuss with the council. And depending on what those results are, well, that can help the council make its decision on which direction to move.
Well, I'll tell you that since the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, I know all my neighbors and neighborhood and so forth. And I've talked with a number of people. They have no clue that the city has this kind of a financial challenge right now. They don't know. And they're basically telling me, do what you got to do. 1 cent is not a big deal, but tell us, what is it that the money's going to go for? And if it's justified, then I'm for it. But they don't have contacts. So if we send consultants out that are interviewing our constituents, they're going to be broadsided.
No.
So what's the point?
The consultants, they are aware of those kinds of things, and they have ways of talking to people, finding out this information without offending anybody or taking them by surprise. These are all these cities that have, I'm sorry, the phone's talking to me, that have enacted these taxes did that after they had polled the residents and found what they were interested in and were concerned and whether that they would support a ballot measure if it was placed on the ballot. We're not asking you to make any decisions on placing anything on the ballot tonight.
And I guess what I would be acutely interested in before that even happens is how is this going to be framed to citizens? Because I've talked with a bunch of people now, and they're going, that's why we elected you, for you to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. So don't get into details, just, if it's what we need to do, tell me what the issues are, and we go for it, one way or the other. And so I'm trying to understand what the point of sending consultants that don't know our community out to do a survey to see if they're going to vote for this kind of a motion.
Let me add to that. I agree with Dr. Daly, and this is where I stand on it. Ultimately, and we've talked about this several times, this would never be and is not a decision of the council. This is put to the voters. And the more time we spend queuing this up is the less time we have to give the voters that information and make that decision. And I also don't want to unduly influence or over-influence folks either. I think this should be their decision. And I guess I may be remiss. I don't quite understand the challenge with us approving this to put on the ballot for the voters to choose. And it basically absolves us kind of from that final decision, other than giving them the option and ability to do that. If we don't get into gear, my understanding is we wouldn't be able to do this for at least another 2 to 2.5 years. And so my concern is that we've already spent a bunch of time talking about it, when at the end of the day, it's up to the voters if they want it or not. So I guess that's my struggle with that. And with Dr. Daly, I'm not sure what else we need to do other than figure out how we convey the message of this excellent presentation here that, hey, costs are going up. We already run super thin. We can't afford to continue business. And if we do, then we're going to have cuts in public works and fire and police and all those other things that we don't want to have cuts in. So I kind of understand that. I also want to respect staff because I know you guys have asked that there's a process that you want to go through based on these consultants. You know, I also know that consultants make money. They're consultants. And so I don't know. I know Grand Terrace is doing it this year, and I know Ukaipa is doing it this year. And it feels like we're going to maybe be the only city outside of maybe Highland and a couple other places that aren't going to have this here pretty soon. And I just want to give the voters an opportunity. That's where I'm at.
And part of where I'm coming from is I'm getting a very consistent message from, granted, this is not a statistically relevant sample size that I'm talking about. I'm walking my neighborhood and talking with people as I'm walking my dog. And their attitude is, do what you got to do. And don't ask me questions that you know more about the answers than I do. And so, in research, we don't usually go out and do a sample to see what the research is going to show before we do a formal survey. So it just seems like there's an extra step in here that we're paying for that's unnecessary.
Okay, then I will ask you to pay attention to the staff report under analysis, item B, tax measure process, okay? Which is due to the Prop 218. Okay, let Dr. Ron Daly turn to.
I'm not sure what you're.
Okay, go to that staff report under analysis. No, you there.
Can I make a point of order while they're trying to figure that out?
Yes, sir.
My question is, when you, on the actual agenda, when you say information as your lead word on the item, and then in the staff report, there's a recommendation to direct staff, there seems to be a disagreement. Which is ruling with regard to the Brown Act?
Well, we are asking, it's what's in the agenda report. That's what staff is asking, is the recommendation, the two recommendations there.
So it doesn't matter what it says on the actual agenda? If it doesn't match? Because it doesn't match.
Information.
Yeah, I do.
Because the general public is going to read the front page and they're not going to go necessarily into the staff report. I just don't, I'm not a big fan of the Brown Act, but we're stuck with it.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Councilmember Rigsby. And I guess one could take a conservative approach and say that it's only an information item, and it doesn't indicate that on the actual agenda that we're asking for the direction that's indicated in the agenda report. So I suppose the conservative viewpoint would be that we have to treat it as just an information item and not ask for direction.
Let me just make a point of order also. And this is why, just so we're clear here, this is why we go back and forth with these agenda things, which we had an issue with last week. So we need to be real clear when we're doing this in the future. Okay?
Well, then my follow-up question is, during reports of council members, we just pull things out of thin air and give advice to, direction to staff. So this whole Brown Act thing is like, it's too tight a sphincter for its own good. But what, could something pop up there? Because things do.
Well, the listing in the agenda does indicate that there is going to be a review of revenue options and information. So I think that would clue in members of the public that matter was being discussed, and if they wanted to be here and speak on it, they could do that. So I'm going back to my original thought of it's probably within the purview of the council to go ahead and provide direction to staff. You're right. Council members do that all the time during information items and council reports. So this certainly gives the public the information or knowledge that this would be discussed. And if members of the public cared to be here or to YouTube listen to that, they would know that this item is being discussed. So I think the council could give the direction that staff is looking for.
Would that include the expenditure of public funds specifically to hire another body? Because you're talking about direction to bring on a consultant, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're saying that we can just give direction to that rather than follow what would be listed as the item specifically asking us to do on the agenda.
I didn't catch the last part of what you said.
You're saying that giving directions, you can just simply give direction even though you're asking us to vote on the use of public funds to give to somebody, whoever that is. So I'm not sure, I guess I want to be clear, because sometimes you give direction is different than having a formal vote and saying, we're all voting to expend public funds for this particular purpose. So I guess my question is, are we going to just give directions or are we going to actually vote on this item?
If I can comment on that, because it's a good point. With the help of the city manager, I mean, I read through this thing and now I'm picking up what I need to. What we're looking for tonight from the city council, and I'm going to read directly from the agenda packet. A unanimous vote by the city council for a declaration of a fiscal emergency will be required to place the revenue measure on the ballot. So what we're looking for tonight, what the staff is looking for, is a declaration of a fiscal emergency by the city council.
No.
All right.
No, not yet.
So what happens before that?
We're looking for direction to hire the consultant who can look into doing the polling. I know I've heard from the mayor and yourself this evening on that part, but that is what staff is looking for, direction to do that. And when we get that information, we come back, that's presented to the council, and then at that time, the council can determine if they want to move forward with placing a measure on the ballot. But we're not asking for that now. We're asking just, we want information gathering to be done so the council's in a
Bring
better,
a consultant in is what it comes down to.
so the council's,
They're looking for guidance from the council on, do we bring a consultant in?
right, to gather this.
And not all consultants are created equal, and I'm not interested in bringing half a dozen consultants in to interview them. So how does that process work?
Staff would probably make that selection based on, contacting staff in other cities. And a lot of these consultants are used regularly by cities. So they're kind of all known in the industry, the ones that do the polling and the discussions and then bring back the information so that the council can then make a more, informed decision about what the voters are interested in and may want, and then direct the placement of the item on the ballot. And then there's a whole series of steps and such that we go through. This is just kind of the preliminary, testing the waters, so to speak, so that the council has that information about what the voters are thinking or where their interests may be or what's of concern to them.
Point of order here. Before we move forward, because it sounds like we're not even on the same page on how we want to move forward, why don't we, this is an information discussion item, let's poll the council. Where do we all stand on this? Because the other point is we could spend the next several weeks or months spending out money when we're not going to get any movement up here. It's going to require 4 people to declare a fiscal emergency. It's going to require, no, I'm sorry, 5 people to declare a fiscal emergency, and it's going to require 4 to vote to put this on the ballot. If we don't have those votes, then we're wasting everybody's time and a bunch of money for nothing. So let's be honest here. Let's talk about where we're at. And I'm not trying to pull anybody out or anything like that. I just don't want to waste any more time. And if we are doing that, and this isn't going to go anywhere, we need to know that right now.
So I've seen the budget, looking at your budgets, pulling them from 2018 till now, and I'm very concerned if we don't do something like this. And I also said, in addition to the tax, we also need to really strategize how we're going to generate revenue yesterday for the city. So I am very supportive.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, but let's see what our poll comes up with here.
I understand the concern regarding the budget, and I do believe that budgets can always be increased in its revenue and balanced in looking at expenses, and I understand that we've done everything we could. So, and obviously it's good to plan ahead. It's not, don't look at this year, look at what's going to look like in the future. Personally, I'm still kind of trying to understand the budget. You beat me to it. I guess you've studied all them all. They're pretty complex. Each one's about 50 pages long with literally dozens and dozens of counts of money being moved around. So it's not something you can just look at. So I'm going to do my best to look at that and get a better understanding of how did our expenses go up, how did our revenues go up, and get a better understanding of that. Having said that, I think that if we move forward to trying to hire a consultant, I looked in the staff report and there was a number of suggestions about how to bring revenue into the city besides taxes, and I would like for us to really explore and pursue those venues as well at the same time. And one way to do that is obviously we can keep doing it ourselves. However, many cities have economic development departments with professional staff who understands how to put together plans and analysis about opportunities and who to talk to and how to talk to them. So if we're entertaining the idea of hiring a consultant to help educate the public about the dire need of our city, I would hope that maybe you'd welcome the idea of bringing a different consultant to consider revenue opportunities. I know there's consultants that come along who can put together a very good plan, and it's specifically for cities who don't have the means to do it or the staff. We talked about multiple people having multiple roles. Trying to bring in business here, it's a full-time job for multiple people. There's a lot of work involved, a lot of back and forth, understanding what's available, what the owners want. I mean, there's just a lot of complexity to try to bring a business here. I would like for us to entertain the idea of bringing on a consultant that can help us put together a good plan that we can initiate, so we have a dual track. One's a tax increase and one is an option to address all the other revenues that were suggested in that list. And there are quite a few. I actually counted over 15 of them. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Are you willing to even entertain this this TUT when it gets to that point? Because I just don't. I mean, I I don't want to waste everybody's time. I respect
TOT
you
or
and
TUT?
the TUT.
These.
The 1 cent that we're talking about, because I just don't want to keep moving forward if we are not going to have the ability to do it.
Don't want to put the cart before the horse. I'd like to, like I said, obviously sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. I still need to get a good understanding of how bad our budget is. I understand there's issues, but so far what I've heard is that we may lay off people in the future. We haven't filled 3 positions, but we need $7.9 million. That's really what I heard. So you're going to have to give me a really good understanding of the fiscal emergency that we're about to run into. And if I have a good understanding of that, then I think I would be more open to the next step.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Daly.
My discussions with the people that I've been visiting along with my dog are basically they want a safe, clean, well-kept community. And if that means that we need to add a minimal tax increase, I haven't had one person that had an issue with that. Their focus is on public safety and a neat and clean community. So I would be supportive.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Rigsby.
I think at this point there are too many moving parts. So, for example, discussion of loosening up some of our previous standards for the Redlands Boulevard corridor. I'm a little bit surprised that there's nobody here to discuss that. I guess it wasn't agendized, but there was a big push by the School of Public Health to limit fast feeders, fast food drive-throughs, and that was pushed through after a lot of public input and a huge amount of international attention to Loma Linda over one McDonald's. And I'd like to ask Dr. Spencer Huang if the School of Public Health still feels as passionately as they do about that topic. That's just one of the topics that I'd like to flesh out as part of my theme here, that there are too many moving parts. The other thing is, I don't quite understand why we just jumped to 1%, because, you know, if you look at the entire staff expenditure for the city, how much is it? 9.9?
9.4 million.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Why do we need 7.9? Like, why don't we need 1/4%? Why don't we need 3/8%? Why not 5/8%? Why is it go straight to
Because I think
1?
you're planning for the future, number one, and it brings us into parity with those other cities around us.
But, you know, do we want parity with San Bernardino on all aspects of city government? I doubt it. And tax policy is just one of those things that, you know, civic spending is not necessarily something I aspire to, you know, massive
No,
spending.
I understand. And I also know that you had some campaign promises to not raise any taxes. And I don't see this as a challenge to that promise, because this is putting the option in the voters' hands. And I guess that's where it feels like we're not even giving the voters that opportunity to make that decision.
Well, there's also the aspect that and I've been an opponent of the concept of consultants from the beginning of my career, just because, you know, how many times has any organization hired a consultant because they didn't know what they wanted to do? It's basically, in this case, you're hiring them as an issue advocacy consultancy. And it's not, you know, it's like, what should we do? It's like, we're pushing for this, how do we do it? So I don't quite believe that, you know, if a majority of, or large majority of the city council is in favor of this, that it wouldn't turn into an issue advocacy campaign, because that's what these things have done in the past in other cities. And then the other aspect is that, you know, one of the proudest accomplishments of my mayoralty and my tenure on the city council is that we run a tight ship. And part of that is the excellent ability of JARB and others to multitask, you know, under dire circumstances even. And the report that I saw tonight, one of the slides that Sonia put up basically said that we're in a fiscal crisis, and then all of the crises were listed in the future tense. So they're not really current crises, they're potential, they're future. You know, inflation is, you know, running apace and we're not keeping up, and the revenue's not keeping up. And so there are aspects of the emergency aspect of it, the fiscal emergency, that I think are still up in the air. And then there's the aspect that if you give a fat man bigger pants, he goes off his diet. So you don't give a city a big pile of money and expect them to run a tight ship immediately thereafter. So those are all things that are running through my mind at the same time, and I'm thinking, why are we running pell-mell in this direction now? You know, so to me, that's the part that I haven't received any answers because I just asked them.
Well, I think there was an answer to that, and what I'm trying to share with you is the fact that what concerns me, and I think maybe others, is that we lose an opportunity if we don't take the shot at this November. Then we can't come back. And by the time we get something like this into place, understand it's going to take 2 years to see fruition anyway. So if we miss this November opportunity, we're talking 4 years before we see any of that revenue potential. What you're signaling to everybody, in the residents, the employees, and everybody alike, is that we don't care about the future. We care about the here and now, and that's all that matters. That is the message that's being sent right now. And if you don't think that that's going to resonate with some people, again, I understand where we all have our personal politics and our values, and 100%. Most of the time, we're all in alignment. But I fear and see a reality coming where the costs for salaries, for products, for people, for everything keeps going up and up and up, and we are not going to be in a position to face that. And I think that is wholly irresponsible for us not to prepare. And I mean,
I think
that's where we're
I
at.
think it's already here. I pulled the org chart. And when you're paying people less than your org chart is not sustainable, right? Like, you can't have someone doing 4 or 5 jobs. And then when I'm looking to see how does the pay compare to what everybody else is, you kind of get this mission statement of, well, it's Loma Linda, you know, it's God's work, and we're, you know, kind of like, you know, work for free a little bit. But people are going away. I mean, they're poaching people left and right to all around. I don't know the last time the fire department has had salary increase, or the public works, or anybody like that. I'm waiting to see what the comp and class comparison looks like. But when I look at the org chart, to me, it's very alarming, and the pay that you're paying. And when someone came last council and is talking about his position, and you only have one person in that whole department that's holding down the ship, to me, that's a sign that it's the Titanic. You know, we've got to figure out the for now. It's not even for the future, for now.
Well, for instance, I haven't seen the salary surveys. I don't know whether we're ahead, behind, or at par. And of course, salary surveys are depending on who you survey. Yeah.
I'll make a couple of suggestions, but I would like to entertain anybody who would like to come forward. Gil? Yes, sir.
Chief, SO, staff, council, mayor. I want to elaborate a little bit on 3 subjects. The Airbnb, we've been trying to fight that for 10 years. Conrad had me going out there. It's a scam, 100% scam. You go there, oh, my cousin's living there. My cousin's staying there for 30 days or 40 days. There's no way to enforce it, absolutely not. The only ones that are getting taxed on it, getting revenue, the beach resorts, Expedia, Verbo, all that kind of stuff, they're the ones getting taxed. In the city, it's impossible. There's no way to prove it. There's no evidence, unless I sit there and try to take pictures of people coming in and out, signing the lease agreement, but other than that, there's no way. So even Lorena and I have tried to fight it, and it's inevitable. Two, I'm here on behalf of my employees. I'd like to elaborate a little bit on Madam Councilwoman. I like what you're saying. I've been here 11 years. I'm filling two hats. I have been since day one: animal control, code enforcement. I took that job. I took that responsibility. I did more in the military, but this is what I took, and I didn't know anything. I was novice in this, government organization. Other than that, I've been doing two jobs plus more. I go above and beyond my line of duty. I do things that staff has asked me to do that is totally out of my job description, but that's what I do. So do these guys. They're certified, they get all their certs. A lot of these guys have Class A, Class B commercial truck driving licenses, not compensated. They could go anywhere they want, but they choose to stay here because that's where they want to be. They want to be part of the city. I'm a resident here. I live and work in Loma Linda. I love this place. I came here 11 years ago. I won't leave till I retire. With that being said, the positions, they haven't been filled. I was here at council when they said, hey, we have X amount of positions that need to be filled. They're on the MOU, they're budgeted. They have not been filled, okay? Why? I always hear we don't have the money. But yet there's been 5 positions at City Hall that have been created in the last 2 years that have been filled and created, and people are employed. We also have a part-timer. If you look at Transparent America, she was here for probably 5 to 6 years, making $95,000 a year as a part-timer. That's more than I make. And she was making, if you look at Transparent America and look under that name, under the part-time, $95,000 a year. I've never made $95,000 a year in my base salary, ever. I've been on call 26 weeks a year for the first 10 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was never compensated, except when I got called out. To me, I thought that I was obligated to be on call and work overtime. Then I found out, I started getting smart, hey, I don't need to work overtime. When I did ask for a $2 raise, to keep working overtime, I was denied. So I stopped working overtime. It's not worth my quality of life. And now I work overtime to help out, to cover other employees and whatnot, but it's just not fair. These guys are in the sun. These guys are digging trenches. They're the ones getting muddy and dirty every day. I see it. They're not being compensated what other cities are making, period. I can only speak for what I see out there in the field. And those positions need to be filled. Other than that, that's all I got to say. It's just heartbreaking that there's some of us that just go above and beyond, and a lot of these guys go above and beyond. It's the same guys on call 24 hours a day, every weekend, holidays, there's somebody on call. I think people need to be monetary compensated, 100%. And those positions need to be filled to lighten their load, to lighten my load. It's just a lot of responsibility, quality of life, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Milford?
Milford Harrison again. First of all, I have a couple of questions. And one is of you, Diane. Does the transient occupancy tax, if that is raised, does that go to a vote of the people?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes. Well, I'm looking at Sonia, and
Yes, all taxes have to be approved by voters.
Even though it doesn't affect the voters?
Yes, as long as it's a tax, it would have to be approved by the voters.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. The other one is if on the TUT, transaction and use tax. Does all of that, if we raise that, let's say 1%, as opposed to what Dusty said, does all of that 1% come to us? Or does that have to be shared with the county or the state or somebody else, like we do with our sales tax?
The full 1% would come to the city,
Comes to us.
Okay, good.
or whatever percentage is approved by the voters, that percentage would come to the city.
Okay, so
For local
it doesn't have
control.
doesn't have to be shared with
No.
other jurisdictions. That's good. I would like to also reinforce what Gil just said. When I was mayor, I used to get 5 boxes of pizza and go out and have lunch with these guys. These men are the face of the city. This is who people see. They don't see any of you out there. They don't see the city staff. They're in this building. These people represent us to all of our citizens, and they need to be treated as though that's the situation. They do a good job. I mean, these guys work hard. I watch them all the time. Every once in a while, one of them waves back to me, as a matter of fact, because they know I appreciate them. And I think we have to look into that, and we have to look into what's happening, what's going to happen in the future, not just now, but next year and the year after. You can't say, well, let's put this off till next year, and then it's too late again. And you can't. I think at least it would have to be put off until 2 years from March. That would be our next opportunity if we don't hit this November. So a next city election. But I certainly I agree with what Ron has said. And I certainly think that it would be something that's supported, and I, for one, will be more than happy to support it in any way I can, publicly or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Victor Puentes. I've been here with the city for close to 10 years now. I am the fleet department, part of the public works. I'm under that. I maintain fire. I maintain all public work vehicles. If it's got an engine and wheels, I fix it. It's a one-man crew. So I do understand the terminology of wearing 2, 3, 4 hats, buying the vehicles, doing the budget. I know I send Sonia a lot of invoices. But what I like to do is I like to keep the work in-house. That is one cost-saving measure that I feel I have for the city. I shop local. I started using the O'Reilly Auto Parts just so we can generate some funds, you know. So, you know, those are things that I like to do. I've taken on welding. I do welding for the city. And, you know, one of the big things is the fire vehicles. I do maintain all the fire staff vehicles, pretty much everything here except the apparatus. And I take pleasure doing it. I am a control freak. That's the reason I like to keep everything in-house. So, you know, and again, with all the staff here, we do work day in, day out, very hard, supporting and helping each other. So it's great to see us out in the field. I know some recognize that. But that's it. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm part of the Fleet Services Division, and that's it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Victor, thank you for entertaining the kids in that leadership program that the fire guys did. Thank you for doing that. That was awesome. Okay, so yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is, a little too close, Eli Herrera. I work in the production department. I am a treatment operator 3. I've been with the city about 17 plus years. I started off in public works, in parks, worked in streets, worked in cross-trained every department possible. And everybody is bringing up really valid points here on the council. And I get why you're going back and forth and whatnot. But you guys have hit on some real key points that are saying the rising price of inflation, and we can't staff because we're in a deficit. This is a thing we encounter every couple of years. And we know you guys do your due diligence on figuring out the budget and what we could spend and where we could not. But I think what is really key is what you're saying is about public safety, okay? And how very, very minuscule the fat is that we can trim here, because we are very understaffed. Just last week, as Gilbert was saying, many of us do wear many hats, to borrow a line from you, Jarb. And we do the best with what we got. But lately, it's been getting to the point where eventually you're going to get burned out. It happens to all of us. Happens in fire with their multiple shifts, happens with the sheriff's department, happens with Lorena with the many hats that she does. It happens to everyone. So, for instance, last week we had a vandalism occur on Richardson Street, which is right dab middle in between Redlands, San Bernardino, and the city of Loma Linda. And if we didn't get it fixed, our water supply would have depleted, and we would have spent a lot of money trying to get water resources to our city from either San Bernardino or possibly Redlands. But we acted fast. We worked with all of our departments. You know, I worked with Jose Rodriguez, who's a lead worker in streets, Walter Scheffler, who helped me locate the fiber. And by that, we were able to pinpoint where and with Kyle too, by the way, who just was here a few weeks ago. And we got it done. It could have took 2 days, could have took a week to figure out where this vandalism occurred. We got it done in 1 day. If it would have happened, that we didn't find it for another 2 days, like I said, it would have been a very expensive cost on the city. But eventually, one of us is not going to be there to know what to do. I was able to take care of it because of my years of experience in taking on so many of these hats, okay? But if you want to start over and take away positions, it just isn't going to work. We do need the help. And we understand that the budget is something we have to fight every year. But it is a little thing about, I think, as our business agent touched on a while back, dignity, respect. And like Gil said, many of us have been here for many years, and there's a reason why we haven't left. We do love the city we work for. We do love our coworkers, because without them, we wouldn't be able to get it done. So when you decide on what you're going to do for your vote, whether to raise it a sales tax up 1%, or the drive-through moratorium, whatever it may be, just consider that. The guys and girls that have been doing it all these years have been putting the weight on their back, and eventually their back will break. Okay, so that's all I have to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I do want to add a survey that I sent out running for the campaign election. I sent a survey out asking the people in District 4 what their priorities were. And District 4, one of the priorities is public safety, right? The fire, the sheriff, the things that go along with public safety. In addition, they said the financial security of the city is some of the 2 top priorities for what, you know, they'd like to see us moving forward.
I was debating whether or not to say this, because I think you guys have heard me say this before, and I often think that you probably just tuned me out. I was speaking with a staff member about this. So, you know, I teach a course for the state, and in this course I have every 8 months I have 24 students from random cities and counties all over California, and every single one of them tells stories about their city or their county struggling, not only to hire people, but in order to balance budgets, and how things are just getting worse and worse and worse. Now, obviously, I work in public safety, so a lot of the focus of this is specific to public safety. There is not one agency in this public safety agency in this state that can hire right now. And it doesn't matter the amount of money you're throwing at people, because what's happening is we're all poaching from each other. But I also know it transcends that public safety world, and it goes into the general employee group too. There are people really struggling all over to try to figure out how to hire people. And if we are not prepared for some of those challenges, we are going to lose staff if we don't have to lay off staff. And if we are not thinking ahead and we miss an opportunity, then I don't know, maybe I got a suggestion. How about the five of us right now agree as a whole to give up our salaries as council people? Would you guys do that? I would do it. I'll vote right now. Let's take a vote. I say we eliminate our council salaries right now.
Is it on the agenda?
Oh, well, see, that's so great. That's a perfect excuse. We can't talk about it because it's not on the agenda. Well, I would ask the city manager to agendize that so we can remove council compensation. Because at some point, we are the leaders of this community. We need to make tough decisions, and they may not be popular with everybody, but if we don't stand up and make decisions and make them timely, we are also responsible for the bad things that happen. All right.
We giving them direction, or
I guess that's what I'm
can we
looking
make a
for next.
motion and give them direction? And how long does that direction, how long till they come back and tell us what's the next?
Well, okay, like I mentioned, to take a look at the under analysis, okay?
I think the hope is to have this information by the end of next month or early June. We have to do it soon to fit in the timelines
Okay.
or to fit in,
So
to
what
have
is
stuff
it?
ready.
We have to do it before first.
Well, if you give us the direction to move forward with the consultant to do the survey and the polling and gather the raw data to test the waters and then bring that information back to you. We're hoping to be able to do that by the end of May or early
I'm willing to put forth a motion
June.
to bring in consultants and see what they have to say. I'm still skeptical of the model that you've described as typical, but, let me ask my questions of the consultant. So I agree. I think we need to move forward. We've got nothing to lose in considering this and having the staff look into it. If we're going to hire a consultant, bring some in and we can talk with them and see how comfortable we are moving forward on this. But I think we've got to take a step forward, and the step forward is to recommend to the city staff that they begin to activate this, and then obviously keep the council informed and included in the decision-making process. Does that fit with what we're looking for tonight?
That's what staff is looking for. I didn't know if Jarb had something he wanted to add to that.
I try to respond to the mayor question is, if we don't get 5 votes to declare a fiscal emergency, we're just gonna spend money, hire a consultant, and we don't get to the point that we will get this on the ballots. So that's.
But my concern is we're not making that decision tonight. I understand why Jarb is asking that, but that's
But we can
not
talk with
what's.
consultants before we've actually hired anybody.
Well, we're on a short timeline.
Well, and that's
the problem. If we'd started looking into this, most cities started looking into this at the end of last year. And so there was a little more time. That's our problem. That's why we're kind of in a crunch. We do have time to do it, but we need that direction or we're not going to get it done and get that information to you. And then when you have that information, you'll be in a better position to determine whether you want to move forward or not, whether you recommend that it go on a ballot or not.
because as I think you sense, I do agree with Councilman Rigsby. You bring advisors in and, they can create work to fill up the time that they want to. And I want to be sure we've got an appropriate methodology that we're comfortable with, but, I'm willing to let that go, but we need to get started doing something. That's my point.
I have a question of the process. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're going to spend public funds for a service, are you not required to go out and get 3 qualified bids and choose the one that best fits this? Or giving you direction tonight allows you to spend $100,000 on whoever you choose? Help me clarify that.
JARB has authority up to a certain level to move forward. It's not like it's a public works contract or public works project that requires going out to bid. So JARB has authority up to a certain amount, and we would keep it under that amount. Yeah, that's the plan.
Then you'd bring back to us a formal process of who you recommend and how you went about choosing that process.
No.
Well, what is your authority? It's not 100,000.
25,000.
Okay, so if you spend $25,000, you get the option of hiring whoever you want, basically, for lack of a better word.
For professional services.
Okay,
for
I follow you.
Best qualified.
I see. Okay, and then after that, we can then move forward with allocating more money or whatever we need to. Okay.
When's the date when they would come back, or what's the time frame? That's my concern, is we need to do this and go and move. So when after you'd hired and they get the consultant, would they bring back information to us?
We're hoping by the end of next month or early June. So 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. That's if we give them the go-ahead.
Okay.
Tonight.
Yes, yesterday. You need the.
And also, I wish Dr. Daly was here, but just another clarification question. We hire these folks to do this polling for us and education, but
No, not the education.
No education. All we're doing is testing the waters.
I see. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
The education would come if the council determines to place a ballot
and
measure on the ballot. Then that's when we would provide information and education. We're not at that step. You guys haven't made that determination yet.
So then, I know this may be an ignorant question, but why do we need to hire another party to do a poll? Why can't we send out a poll ourselves, the city staff?
Because staff doesn't have the training, and then these are folks that do it.
Professional polling. Okay, I follow you. Okay.
Professional for
So the data
these
is
very
accurate.
kinds
I
of
see.
measures.
Okay.
Montclair put one on the ballot 4 years ago, but they went through. They're using in Montclair, they used the same consultant who did the same kind of polling and surveyed and tested the waters and then brought that information back to the council. Montclair did start earlier in the process, so, but we're where we're at. We are where we are, and so that's the consultant that's.
And then, is it possible to pass the fiscal emergency and putting this on the ballot on the same night, or do you need to do it
You can do it at the same time or at different times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That can all be determined at a later date. Yeah.
Okay, so, yes, sir.
Question about, so this first proposed phase is not the issue advocacy phase. It's assessing unaided awareness, and is it a push poll, or how are they going to word the poll? That's all of that stuff plays into it.
Yes, they do that, but they're clear in that they're just testing the waters is the best way I can say. They're not advocating, of course, they're not doing anything like that. They're just getting information of what's important to the residents and what their concerns might be.
But then again, that's what, we're kind of experts in that. We've been
What?
taking the temperature of the town for years.
But I imagine they actually give you hard data with a set amount of responses.
Right, right. They do all
And
that.
it's
And
random.
then
and
they'll,
it's-
they'll go over the numbers and their results with the council.
Okay. Let's cut to the chase on this. I'm guessing it only takes a majority to move this. So do we have a motion? You made a motion. Okay. All right. We're good with his motion.
Lynette,
Lynette?
you need me to repeat what I was,
Yes.
I don't know if I can remember it all. No.
I
what-
have one further question before we
Yes,
go
sir.
forward. You guys know the marketplace for these consultants. Are these the same guys that do the issue advocacy later? Because I can't imagine there's somebody I know they're polling firms that do generic polling.
No, they couldn't be the same. These folks are doing the polling, and then there would be different consultant doing the educating. We don't do any advocating. We just do educating, providing information.
That's a subtle distinction.
I was a teacher for 40 years. Educating and advocating are kind of the same thing in my world, but anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
we're beyond that. Let's get through this item and move it. So let's clarify the motion. Is that to follow staff recommendation for those two items? Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Does that make it simple?
I
Okay.
second.
And we have a second. Madam Clerk, would you please?
Can I make a substitute motion?
You can, if you get a second.
Yes, I would just like the idea, since we're in a hurry to hire a consultant for this particular issue, kind of go back to what I asked before. I like the idea of us bringing someone on board that can help put together a good business development plan to generate revenue. So I'd like us entertain the idea of bringing someone on board. If we're going to start giving the staff authority to spend money, we'd like to spend money to do that as well. That's my motion, and I'll see if anybody supports it.
No. Can I respond to that? I actually like that idea. I'm not opposed to that. However, my ask would be that you and Dusty spend some time with Jarb and go over the budget the way the rest of us have, so we're all clear. And then we'd have to determine, are we talking consultant or actual staff member, because that would be.
I'll be very clear. It's going to be consultant. And if we're going to spend $100,000 on an advocacy group for taxes, I'm sure we have money for this as well. So, and this, regardless of, I mean, I thought about this for a long time. Regardless of where the budget is or where I would taxes, the idea of having, at one point, in fact, Milford, at one point was our business development director when we had one. So this goes way back. I felt like this city needed to do something about that, regardless of what the budget situation is. So that's just my 2 cents.
And I'm supportive of that idea. Can we do it separately and maybe agendize that?
We need to. They're not related.
So we have
to be
some
two
specific
different
direction on
motions.
that, because I do like that idea. I'd like to talk about it more.
I just think this is a good time to do it. I don't know. In my view, we're borderline. I'm not sure our agenda item is even properly agendized. It says information item. It doesn't say take action to hire anybody. So I'm a little concerned about that. But at that rate, I don't think we need to come back to, belabor it. But look, if I don't have a support on it and a second, it's a
We
moot
already
point.
have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I just had a
That's
substitute
to accept
motion.
the staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Then we
Well-
can take this up separately.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference. I hate to poke this too much, but there's a little bit of a difference between taking a vote to hire a polling consultant and giving direction to staff. Direction to staff, typically, the ones that arise out of nothing, they typically are things like, could you look into the possibility of all, and I know we've already done that, but is this going a little bit too far? I mean, directing staff to specifically hire someone for a specific service?
So since it's in the staff report and there's a motion on the table, we're just going to move this forward. Madam Clerk, unless I hear a second on that substitute. Okay,
Motion.
hearing none, but I do want to bring that back.
I have to approve because I don't have to direct on my system yet. But motion is to direct staff to identify potential revenue options such as a transactions and use tax and authorize staff to work with consultant to assist in the process of polling, public outreach and education, or just polling? All three.
We just stated it's not public outreach and education, it's polling.
Yes, for this evening, we're just looking for polling.
So authorize staff to work with consultants to assist in the process of polling. I will take your vote. Excuse me.
The maker of the motion has to agree with that. Is that
Oh,
your motion?
Now I'm confused.
So if you
Are
read
we
the,
bringing if what I think I just understood is that directing staff to hire a consultant that'll come in and do polling. That was not my motion. My motion is that staff move forward in beginning discussions with, and I realize we're under a time crunch, but I want consultants to come in and make a proposal of just what their methodology will be and what the basis of that is.
oh, that, we don't have time for that, Ron. We don't have time for that. So we might as well just scrap the whole thing at
They
this
only
point.
have 4 weeks to get it. Like they're behind the 8 ball. They got to move. In fact, they should already be collecting data to see if the people want to do this. So they have to hire a consultant within this week, probably even, to get going.
I think when the consultant brings the data back, you
Then
can
they're going to
question the
say,
methodology,
yeah.
and they will have that probably included in their report. But
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if we're going to talk with a consultant, then, I mean, we can schedule extra meetings. There's nothing sacrosanct about first Tuesday of every month. We're in an extra meeting now.
and we have another one
So
in 2
if we
weeks.
created the time crunch that we're in,
Yeah.
then we need to adjust our schedule to meet the necessities of the whole thing.
Okay, I'm good
But
with
to
that.
just hire somebody to come in and do what he or she usually does wherever they're working, I'm not for that.
Can you give, like when you're interviewing or whatever, can there be something that's immediate where it's shared and we kind of see who you're going to go with? Is
What they're
that allowed?
proposing. What are they proposing?
Like immediate when they want to work for us?
The purchasing policy and the government code requires us to do at least 3 bids. 20,
No,
She talking about scope of work.
right.
He sent the scope of work.
Oh,
Right,
you already
I'm-
know. You already know the one that you want to go with?
We have only asked one person. So what I was trying to explain is that we would have to get quotes for at least 2 more people to make a decision. But I do have already,
What they want to do?
right.
Yeah, that
Do you
makes
wanna-
sense. That I'm fully supportive of.
So one of the consultants that we've spoken with has recommended that they could possibly get the work done between 5 to 8 weeks.
And what is the
And it's
outcome of that 5 to 8 weeks?
within, they will go out into the community and start the polling. They will conduct either 250 interviews or 300 interviews, depending on what their research is based on our community. So they will come in, they will interview staff, they will have meetings to gain knowledge of our city. They will go online as well, and then they will start the polling. And the final outcome is to find out what the community wants, what they would like to see.
How
They
many,
can do that
how many
for under-
polls will they do in District 5?
They did not provide that level of detail.
But are they going to do all that for $25,000? Because he only has authority to spend $25,000 at that point.
I believe
What was the bid?
I believe their research is based on the normal amount of voters that usually show up to the polls. And so they're proposing conducting 250 interviews to 300 interviews. And the range is 23,500 to 24,950.
They can do it. They're not going to be interviewing them for an hour. It'll be like, quick and short and to the point. So,
It's a 16-minute interview,
yeah.
and that
pretty
includes
good.
phone calls. Telephone interviews will be conducted in English and Spanish. Online interviews will be conducted in English only. And it will be telephone calls, email invitations, and text invitations.
How does that
There
measure up?
are abundant other questions that I think are relevant. How do we know what kind of a sample size they're going to pull? How do we know what districts they're going to go to? I mean,
So I think we have to
you
be
don't just
careful.
send people out and start knocking on doors. So I need to know a little more about this to have any confidence.
We have to be a little careful that we don't influence the process.
Right.
So we really should not have too much
no.
influence.
We don't want to, it would be inappropriate for us to try to influence the results. The process, we have every right to be right in the middle of.
I think before they even go out, probably what Dr. Daly's suggesting, we could even sit with them and suggest, like if we want a certain percentage from each of the districts that we have, we could probably give a little more input as to and how they can go about without influencing the outcome. We could probably do that.
No, I agree.
But
That's
and just having that conversation before we go. But I think we got to hire and then know, hey, before they leave, we want to sit and have them kind of vet with us their strategy.
Are you?
it's this whole consulting business is more art than science. I've had hired consultants. I've been a consultant. And I'm telling you, most people are simply saying, what are you going to do, and go for it. And so I want to have some confidence. If we're actually going to do this early polling, which I'm still skeptical of, I think that's the 5 of us, that's our job. But, if that's the standard, I'm not going to fight that. But I'm not willing to just hire a consultant and let them do what they've been doing for the last 5 years at multiple other communities. I want to know what they're doing and why they're doing it. It's called science.
Can I take this back to the original polling we did here on the dais? Because if there's not going to be any movement after this, then we are wasting $24,000. So I want to see the data. I want to see it on the ballot. You've expressed a desire for that. So has Dr. Wang. If the other 2 gentlemen will not, no matter what the data says, advance this forward, then we are wasting that money. And so that's what I'm asking for, is a commitment. Does the entire group want to see the data? Then we can start talking about what that's going to look like. But otherwise, we are literally wasting money. And I 100% agree with Jarb. Does that make sense? So it sounds like Mr. Popescu says, I want to see the data, but I'm not sure. It sounds like Dr. Rigsby is saying it doesn't matter.
I'm not, I've already expressed my viewpoint about the whole notion of taxes. I'm not sure that I'm being pushed into, oh, yeah, I need to hire a consultant. I'm not there yet. I would love to see the data, and obviously that costs money. I'm just not willing to do it because I want to see whether this tax thing is going to take off or not. I agree with Dr. Rigsby, and Dr. Daly makes perfect sense. One of the coolest classes I had in college was statistics, and boy, you can manipulate data like you wouldn't believe it based on how you ask the question, who asks it, who you ask it with, who you're contacting. I mean, there's so many variables in statistics that can taint the data or move it in any direction you want. So I'm having a hard time being persuaded that a firm who gets hired to help cities pass tax increases, or perhaps, and I know you said it might be a different firm, that's fine. And we're going to assume that it's going to be completely different and they're unbiased. But like Dr. Racy said, if we're giving direction to hire a consultant because we want to know if the residents of Loma Linda want a tax increase, I'm willing to bet a lot of money that that poll is going to come back that, oh yeah, we're going to need taxes. So I'm not sold that this polling by this independent company with an agenda that's on the agenda to educate, to direct on revenue options is somehow going to give us some amazing data that's going to clarify what the situation is for the voters. It would have to be completely, unbiased. And to a certain extent, we all campaigned. Boy, did we campaign. And we got a pretty good understanding of where the residents stood, and we campaigned on certain issues. And for some, it was clear what the residents wanted. If you want more data from the residents, I guess that's your prerogative. I'm not ready to jump on board and comfortable with the idea that this is the one and only way we can address it. I was willing to consider having the city conduct a poll, but of course you want to do a scientific and you want someone who knows what they're doing, but at the same time I'm a little skeptical because I know what their agenda is and why they're being hired. They're hired to show us a poll whether the residents want to raise taxes. I'm willing to bet it's going to come back they do.
I'm just hard pressed to imagine how a 16-minute interview would not be a push poll.
It is a push call.
It's a push poll.
Yes.
So it's not really a scientific poll. It's an advocacy
I'm sorry,
poll.
it's a push pull. Push pull.
Yeah. Push polls mean, for example, if you knew that so-and-so was a bank robber, would you vote for him? That's the push poll.
And then just to clarify, this will be a scientific poll by a PhD, and it will be equal number in each district.
And if
Of
I'm
likely voters, just to clarify.
And if I might add, it's best that the council not have any involvement in it. We want it to be entirely neutral. I've heard the comments that were made here, but the reputation of the consultant is based in part on him giving accurate information to the councils he advises. And if the accurate information is that this is not likely to pass, that's the information he's going, whoever is going to present to the council. And we need staff and the council members to not be part of it. So we can
I disagree. I absolutely disagree.
Because we don't want to be accused of advocating. You haven't even made a decision yet as to putting it on the ballot. So this part, this neutral, objective, where we're not involved in it part gets taken care of first.
That I understand. But we have every right, and in my view, need to understand what the methodology is and how it works, what questions are going to be asked, how are they framed, because I agree with Dusty, how these things are framed can predict what the outcome is going to be. And
It might be helpful just before to have them come and share what his, it sounds like
Sure.
he's PhD in what?
you've got a city council of nerds here. You have to accept that just for the start.
So my background is biostats,
Yeah.
but a PhD, don't know. I mean, it might be helpful to have him come here and share, without us grilling him, but what he might want to do.
He or she has to market their business too, so let them come market.
The credentials
May, right?
are not listed on
They're
here,
not.
but I
It's
can
okay.
find that for you.
It's okay.
I
It's
won't
okay.
know.
I'd say we have to
won't
move
for the
forward
schedule.
and we have to get them going, have them come give a presentation and,
No, I agree.
yeah.
I think the timing is
gotta
going to
go.
be important, and I think if we wait to have the consultant come in and tell us exactly, we're going to be pushed
Too late.
too far
I'm
down.
gonna-
The consultant will present the data and answer your questions about how the polling was done. You'll have a lot of written data as to the questions that were asked, the percentages, things
Ron-
like that.
Ron and Rhonda, at risk of really upsetting our peers on here, let me say what I am observing here. This is a deliberate way to stall and prevent this from moving forward as we continue this process.
Okay.
In my mind, there are clearly two folks here that don't want to do this. That's why we're getting questions about various legalities, challenges to the agenda. And I'm trying really hard, but understand that we're probably not going to move any further the more that we dig into this.
Okay.
Because I think we have two people that are pretty set on not wanting to do it. That's why I'm trying to flesh that out, just so we're all clear. We can all be friends afterwards and we know where we stand. But if we keep moving this forward and creating a bunch of staff work and getting us all spun up on things, and it's not going to move, we're wasting our time.
Should we make
I guess my frustration right now is that we have evidently, unbeknownst to me, put ourselves in this time crunch. One of the things I always taught my students is quality is the standard and time is the variable. And so you plan to have adequate time. But what I'm hearing is we've got this time crunch that evidently we in the city have created. And so now time is the priority and quality is the variable. And so I don't want to be obstinate and difficult or academic. I'd like to know what we're getting before we buy it. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And if that means we meet in the next week, I won't be here, but that may be better.
What about a subcommittee or a working group? But again, the problem, Ron, and I don't think we're on the same page. I don't think it matters because I don't believe Dusty and Ovi will move this forward no matter what the data looks like.
Well,
Do you
let's find
see?
out.
And so that's the problem I have with all this.
I take offense to that a little.
Well, and I'm trying not to offend you, but I'm also
know,
trying to
but-
flesh out, let's get to the
No,
heart
but I
of the
don't
matter.
think, I think Ron, Dusty, myself make legitimate points and have legitimate questions that need to be answered. I don't think it's in the interest of delaying it. If anything, I want to be accommodating. If he has more questions to be addressed, then why not? I mean, there's a point to be made about questioning who you're hiring. That's a very valid point. It's not our money. These are the people's money. We're stewards of it. We need to make sure it's properly used. So asking that question in no way means that, oh, I've already made up my mind. I think it's fairly fair to ask those questions.
Oh.
So
The guy has a PhD in sociology, so he probably does this quite often for a living. That's what I'm getting. Like, he's probably very solid on his stats and how he's going to do it.
Yes,
That's
he
a-
was.
Yeah.
He assisted the city of Chino in the polling that they did, and there, as you can see, it was put on the ballot and it passed with a 60.1% approval.
What did he predict it would pass with?
I did not ask that question.
I wonder if he's got any accuracy.
I know that he
I'm
does.
sure a
he is-
PhD in sociology, he's
Yeah, but-
probably pretty good.
But
That's
if he predicted 90 and it was 60, he's way off. If he predicted 40 and it's 60, I don't know.
I think
He should be flogged.
PhD in sociology, he's probably got a good standard deviation.
All right,
I'm
let's-
comfortable with that guy. I think with a PhD in sociology that he's not going to steer us wrong. He's going to give us good and accurate.
Here's the reality. We could get data back that says, hey, this isn't popular in your city. You shouldn't attempt it.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
plenty of, no, Highland did that
We
a couple
could.
of years ago, and Highland got the message back not
Yeah.
to try it.
Yeah.
So, you know, It's up to you guys. What's the pleasure? Where are we at? Are we still moving those motions, or did they change, or?
Got everybody looking at me. I
Go
guess
for
I
it.
made the motions. Okay. No, I'll stand by the motion, and just for clarification, obviously not directly related to the motion. I'm going to be gone for about 2.5 weeks. I trust the wisdom of this council to follow through with whatever. I still believe it is not inappropriate to bring whoever wants to bid on the job in to explain who they are, how they go about their business, what their experience is, what their methodology is. And I'm telling you from experience, it can make a huge difference. It can. Now, maybe all these people are all equally qualified and equally compelling in their presentations. Then then we've got a decision to make. But I am entirely comfortable going on the vacation that's been planned for a long time and leaving it to this council, and I will abide with a smile on my face with whatever the outcome is. But I do not apologize for wanting to have some sense of the caliber and quality of what's going to happen here with our citizens. I mean, that's why I walk streets. My dog got more exercise in the last couple of weeks than she has for a long time, and met a lot of new people. But that's not a scientific sample size at all. That's my district, and it's even a small part of my district. So that's where I'm coming from. But I do believe we need to move this forward and direct staff to go ahead and begin to recommend next steps to the council.
Okay, so is your motion based on the recommendations that are there in the staff report?
All right, now I need to find the Can you read the recommendations of the staff
Well,
report?
I can handle that by
Okay, go
my
for it.
clarification. I have trouble with going with the staff recommendation because it basically says consultants, plural, for polling, public outreach, and education, because that sounds like two different consultancies. And we've only been talking about polling. So I think if you go with the staff recommendation, it basically gives you license to go all the way to the ballot, or at least all the way to a consultant to press for the ballot.
I don't think the motion.
An amendment to the recommendation.
Here, I'll make an amendment, at my prerogative. Authorize staff to work with a consultant to assist in the process of polling for this particular issue, period. Yes or no?
Are you stalling, Ron? Because that's really what you're doing.
With appropriate consultation on methodology.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk with Jarb, we can tell him what our concerns are, and Jarb's a smart guy. He can follow up on it. If the ideal, but we've already defined we're in this time crunch. Ideally, I'd like to bring 3 people up here and do presentations and say, here's how we go about our business. Here's where we've worked before, and here's our methodology. It's clear to me we don't have that kind of time because we've stalled on this, and here we are. So that's probably not realistic. And while I'm not happy about it, I accept it. And as long as we don't get a shyster, they probably aren't going to screw anything up. So,
Okay, did you accept my modification?
repeat it.
Authorize staff to work with a consultant
No, to
Singular?
interview consultants and make recommendation.
to proceed with the process of polling.
That's good.
Okay.
And I second.
We have a second. Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, I didn't, Mayor Pro Tem Daly, that was his amendment to the motion?
He agreed to it, yes.
Okay. To direct staff to identify potential revenue options such as a.
No, no, no.
No,
No.
just to authorize.
Authorize staff to work with a consultant. So we still have to come back for a recommendation then. We might as well just
We
throw
don't have
this
the
thing away
time.
because
We
we
don't
are
have the time.
really done here.
Hire a consultant.
To proceed with the consultant. To work with a consultant to proceed with the process of polling.
Yes,
Yes.
You agree as a second?
I second.
I'll take your vote.
Okay. We're not using the screen?
Yes.
That's fine. Do I have a second? I'll make that motion then. Do you still second that as my motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Please vote.
Well, I don't have anything on the screen, so
You don't?
no, it's mine's
You vote. Okay, I can vote for
I
you.
killed it.
Let me see.
You guys have screens?
Count,
Oh.
count,
Blew mine up.
Councilman Rigsby, do you have? Oh, okay. Motion failed.
Okay, so we're moving, that agenda item dies for lack of movement.
Oh, gosh.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. It's after that. Okay, we have first and a second. Can we figure out how to turn on my screen because I can't see anything here? Did it turn off? It's completely turned off. It went black. Like there's no power button or anything. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Please vote. Although, shall we wait for Councilman Popescu or?
You can put abstain.
He made the motion.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is direction regarding our drive-throughs and fast food service. Sonia. Jarb.
Well, again, this item came at the last city council meeting, and we presented to you, and kind of nothing happened. So I request that, get to the point. Do you want to have the drive-through back in town, or yes or no?
Okay, do we want to lift the drive-through ban? So I've spoken to a couple of business owners, including the owners of the Stater Brothers lot across the street. Progressive Real Estate Partners, they do more, I'm reading from an email here. They do more retail transactions in the Inland Empire than any other brokerage office. They have a long history here in Loma Linda. They would like to encourage the city to change its ordinance to allow drive-through service. The email says there are so many operators that have changed their business plans over the last decade. In the past, operators like Panera Bread, Panda Express, Chipotle, Starbucks, Farmer Boys would never consider drive-through options. Now, because of the percentage of people who are seeking convenience, many quality users will only do a new location if they have a drive-through or drive-up window option. Drive-through is no longer synonymous with unhealthy. It is also no longer synonymous with meat-only options. Many of these restaurant concepts are catching up to the vegetarian community. The addition of vegetarian options helps many of these restaurants succeed because of a segment of society being more health and environmentally aware. Another one from Matt Franklin. Again, it's kind of on the same lines that he has been actively talking with several potential tenants, and these are tenants that have healthy histories and options, And so I think everybody's concern when we did this over 10 years ago was based on the McDonald's and that particular food model. And I think we're looking at some different types of restaurants and businesses that want to be able to do the drive-up option, and we are unfairly precluding them. I think there's a possibility. We've been talking tonight about revenue, that they may be able to fill some of their empty space with one of those healthier options, and relatively quicker than anything else we've been talking about tonight. So I would encourage us as a council to talk about repealing or to consider repealing that fast food drive-through ban.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
Milford Harrison again. I have a client that's in the audience that owns a piece of property who is very interested in, and it's not up here on Barton Road, it's in the Redlands Boulevard corridor, and they are interested in having that option.
Thank you, sir. All right, any comments or question from the council?
I have a question of our newest council member. The School of Public Health wanted to put my head on a stick for voting for the McDonald's. Have they changed their mind, or have they decided that with all this new information about better options of drive-throughs, because drive-through is frankly a placeholder for fast food. Okay. And then they presented all these data that fast food restaurants, ratio of grocery stores to fast food restaurants is a marker of the health of a city and all this stuff. And my opponent in this late election was definitely on the side of not doing fast food restaurants. You're the same school at the university. What's the temperature of the school now? Do they still have this zealous opposition to fast food?
It's certain faculty will always hold that, but I think COVID has been a game changer, right? COVID has changed how we see, how we pick up groceries, how we, even I was talking with staff, they don't even have time to sit down. They have 30 minutes here to even get through. So COVID and time crunch and how we do business now, I think has really changed the view of a drive-through, what that means. And there's not only, so it's no longer just synonymous. I know when McDonald's came, that back then, yes, drive-throughs was really heavy, McDonald's, Burger King, those kind of things. But now you've got places like these fancier tea houses that are drive-through, different types of, even Chipotle wanted to have, they have vegetarian burritos where you could drive up and I guess their takeout would be a kind of a takeout window or something. So it's different. So I think in lieu of what has happened because of the pandemic, the School of Public Health probably won't string you up and flog people if you vote to, once again have drive-throughs. Does all faculty agree? No, we still have some holdouts that would probably say you can never have, but majority is lessening that kind of perspective because of the pandemic.
What would a Joan Sabate say?
He would say you're going to eat walnuts and avocados, and you will not get those at any type of, you'd have to get them at,
I think
and
Chipotle,
probably
you can get those actually.
you can get, he might let you have
saying.
those, but he would be more focused on what you're getting, not so much as how you're acquiring it.
I appreciate the commentary, but it was a huge, huge battle. I'm not necessarily against removing drive-throughs, but it needs to pass some thresholds. One kind of goes back to the earlier statement. I want to gauge the community's interest. I'd like to know those people who really fought hard, and they fought hard. I'm going to tell you, they had this whole place packed. In fact, I was so upset at Dusty, I called him the McDonald's mayor at that point. But I like to really see them here and hear from them how they feel about it. That's number one. Number two, I know we talked about these folks who are talking about the change in business practice and how certain businesses are bringing on drive-throughs, and I 100% agree with that. I want to get a little more clarity on, I know there's a wish list of the drive-throughs we'd like to have. I'd like to get more certainty of, hey, if you guys remove this, I'm going to, bring in a shopping center that's going to generate about $200 million in business. A drive-through by itself may get us $10,000. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I'm a little concerned that a drive-through is not going to give us the windfall we want, but nevertheless, in certain circumstances, maybe it's worth it. But I want the data to help support my decision-making.
What I can say is that when I was mayor, I talked all the time to our business development department, which was Conrad. And he batted aside many, many proposals for putting something in a little triangle between California and Barton, for putting in lifestyle centers or whatever, various options for commercial retail that would be sales tax generating businesses. He batted aside, and everybody who came up said, will you let us put a fast feeder in the front of the parking lot? Nope, you can't get that. Okay, not interested. So repeatedly, fast feeders were, and I don't know if that model is still true. I don't know. Is that still an issue with people who are going to develop retail? Do they have to have do they have to have a Taco Bell in the front of the parking lot to pull people in? I don't know. Those are the kinds of things we need to investigate. But I know 10 years ago it was a big issue. It was a big issue, and nobody was willing to do anything. So essentially, if you wanted no commercial development and no fast food, that ban worked wonders.
I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Well, I was in the middle of it.
Yeah, well.
That's my take on it.
I think moving forward, we'd have to think of how do we envision our city with your own model is health and prosperity, right? So really going back to that, and though, we don't own the Blue Zone trademark and it's owned by some other Adventist systems, I think really embracing that and figuring out, hey, how do we become better known for this? How do we get these vegan options? How do we get these other things? I think focusing on what we can't have is really tightened our hands as to what we're allowed and can do. I think it's more important we start focusing on how we want to be. How do we grow this kind of identity? And so I think, having this kind of drive-through food ban is a little bit ridiculous when you have 3 smoke shops. It's, 3 smoke shops is a lot more damaging, than, and I think ours has been caught for selling even to underage minors. I don't know about that for sure, but I have heard it's not great. So I think, do we need to have this ban? Is it viable after the pandemic has occurred? That I would say no. I think it's time we have to really rethink how we approach this.
But I just want to point out that the smoke shops are an example of why you can't direct who the renters are, who the people leasing these facilities. So you can say, yeah, we definitely want to project a blue zone image. We want to get vegan places. Well, we tried to get vegan places. Every vegan place that ever existed, we tried really hard, and they just didn't see the rooftops in this area to justify their business model. So what you end up with is, you've got the visions of, Veggie Max or whatever, and you end up with Taco Bell. So, you get whoever they can rent it to. So that has to be taken into account as well. A vision of Sugar Plums is not going to come true because, they could put a drive-up smoke shop in there for all we know.
So being part of that McDonald's gate, all of us, you missed out. I'm sorry. But being one of the people that voted for it, along with Dr. Rigsby, was based on the idea of property owner rights. And the reality is that we weren't supposed to know what restaurant was going to be there. The fact that it was a McDonald's was leaked out, and it wasn't supposed to have been leaked out. And unfortunately, it became the issue when all we really were approving was the pad, correct? And so it came down to a fundamental idea of rights. And the developer and property owner of that property is a longtime, multi-generational Loma Linda resident. And one of the interesting things that came out was in some of that testimony was the fact that we have literally thousands of people that don't live in this community but visit this community for services at our medical institutions. And the reality is they may not eat or drink or smoke the way us residents do. And so one of many arguments that was made was that all we're really doing is virtue signaling in the fact that our residents are probably not the people that are going to partake at those restaurants. Those people going to those restaurants, a lot of them are going to be the visitors coming in to visit family at the hospital or to go to the VA, and that may be the type of lifestyle that they live and are accustomed to. And us trying to force them to go to a vegan fresh is probably not going to happen on their first visit. Now, maybe on their second or their third, especially because they have Dr. Rigsby as a physician now at the VA. I'm pretty sure that's going to play into some of your diagnosis, but which is good. I think what you just said was awesome, Dr. Wang, was that we want to be able to offer those options as choices and not force people into one thing or the other. And I think we still have a very robust planning commission, and obviously city staff is very adept in determining how some of these things are put together. And so I think they kind of know the desire and will of the city. And, could we end up with something that we don't want somewhere? Maybe. But I also think in talking to some of these property owners, they see and they know what we want, and they're a little more tuned into what the possibilities are versus how that developed.
Along with Councilwoman's point, my wife and I just came back from an extended trip in Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania, and we got back with no food in the house. And this afternoon, before I came here, I went to San Bernardino, and I drove through a Panera Bread. Panera, 3 years ago, whatever, didn't have a drive-through in their whole company. And I got a great vegetarian meal that I haven't had a chance to eat yet because I've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. But I'm looking forward to it because they've got great food, and it's very healthy food, and there's some great choices. And here's an opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Thanks.
This is just total speculation stretch that has no basis in any reality, but I still think that some of the challenges in surrounding cities are still there, and there's an opportunity for places like Panera making an advertisement to the restaurant gurus that I got to ask you, how many homeless people were in the drive-through there at Panera when you drove through? Okay, well, you had a good night. I would imagine that at some point, again, there may be opportunities for restaurants and businesses in other cities that are looking for a safer, cleaner home may consider us as well. So, anyway. All right, any further comment, or do we have any will of the council?
Would you consider continuing this item so we get input from those folks, or you just want to make a decision on that tonight?
I would prefer we make a decision. As was brought up by our council chamber director, we actually brought this to a city council agenda over a year ago, and we keep kicking these things down the road. And so I guess my 14 years here on this council have taught me that the way things don't happen is us talking about them. And so I'm concerned that we just keep doing that. And so I think we have to decide if that's something we're going to do or not and make a decision. But that's just my opinion.
And I know you've already expressed this, but what's the primary driver behind it? Because there's people who want it, or what's the main advantage for doing this?
I specifically for me, again, we started talking about this over a year ago in ways to generate revenue. I mean, that's how fast a year goes by. Anyway, so that's a driver for me, but also in talking to the property owners across the street that have very real, what they believe are very real, imminent options to potentially put in place. And to me, when we're talking about revenue, the faster we get moving on something, the better. And their indication to me is the two companies that they're talking to, which I believe are both favorable to us. I mean, obviously the no drive-through thing is a non-starter, and so we have a vacant building versus the potential of putting somebody in that building.
Talking about the building here at Staters?
Yes,
Yeah.
the old bookstore.
Well, I know he laments that, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I know for a fact there were multiple people who wanted to move in there for years. The old Thrifty stayed vacant, I kid you not, for 20 years. And part of the reason is cost. And the old Blockbuster Video, I'm not even sure it's still vacant, if I'm not mistaken. There's lots of retail businesses that are flourishing. So I'm having a hard time believing that, oh my gosh, I have this great opportunity to bring in a business, yet there's all those other vacant ones. So, anyway, I'll rest my case at this point.
Do we have a motion?
My motion is that we lift the no drive-through food service from our books. No, I'm making a motion that we change the direction on drive-through food service.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Madam Clerk?
Motion is to lift the restrictions on drive-through food services. May I take your vote, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, my fault. Please vote. Motion
I'm still
carried.
not sure that item was agendized properly.
This one?
Yes. It talks about giving direction to staff. It should be, there's a specific ordinance, it should be listed, the number, and identifying, saying we are removing this ordinance from the books. I don't know, maybe I'm old school or something.
Well, we would bring back an ordinance. This was just direction
No,
that
you're
you
kidding me.
want.
This was not what I asked to be put on the agenda. And I was very, very clear about it. And that's where we're going to have problems here if we're not, and I apologize for speaking out, but I'm kind of over it. So when I ask for something very specific that we put on the agenda, we're going to do it from now on. And we're going to call the votes on it. And we're not going to monkey around like this because we are literally not getting anything done and we are a laughing stock. Okay? I apologize, but I need to know, is this legal? Can we do it or not? Do we have to bring it back?
We are just asking for direction, and then we would bring back the proposed ordinance.
The direction was to put it on the agenda this way. But I digress. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
So the substitute motion, that basically nullifies the vote.
How does that nullify the vote?
Because it didn't, because
Because it's not valid.
So does it turn it into what they wanted, or is it because
Mr. Mayor, if I may, to explain the process. So with this direction, now we can prepare the packets and we would create the ordinance to repeal the previous ordinance. And it does has to go through the public hearing process. So we do have to put it in the newspaper and do a 10-day notice and send it to our typical 3 locations. There is a process that we have to do before we bring it before you in the public hearing status.
No, I understand that, but that was the direction that we gave 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. And that's where I'm serious. We have to get real clear on what we're doing here, because this informational stuff is going to get called on every time.
I was here 2 weeks ago and we didn't give directions to staff to bring this back. You brought it back by putting it on the agenda, which is your prerogative. You know,
It was asked to be brought back by specific council members.
Yeah, but to me, the problem is we just moved and voted on dump it. We didn't move and vote on bring back the tools to dump it.
I understand. You're right. So that's not a valid vote. I
So I
understand.
think we need to pull that vote back and
Correct.
just substitute what I just said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What I was saying is that I don't think that what we moved and voted was what they're understanding. His motion was, I move that we eliminate this restriction. Okay. I think what we need instead is a motion that says, I move that you bring back whatever the process is to make that happen.
Okay.
I know that's vague, but
Yes. Are you making that motion or no?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Okay. We have a first and a second on that one.
Then we can get valid feedback on what we're actually doing. Because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the zealots to show up.
They will.
Tell them.
The 3 of them will come.
Tell them to come. Because, you know, I still have welts.
With hamburgers.
so you're saying you might be persuaded not to move forward with this?
Yes, I'm saying that. Because
Okay.
public input, that's what it's all about.
So that means now, I'm not gonna even go there. All right, cool. All right, so we have a first and a second. Let's vote on this.
Okay, motion is to bring back the revised ordinance to remove the drive-through restrictions. I don't know if I said that correctly.
I think you did great. Better than the rest of us.
Please vote. Yours is not there?
Did it get turned off too?
No. Let's just vote
Since
by
you make the
hand.
motion,
Do we
may
have
I
to do it
vote for you?
electronically?
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to old business. No, we just did that. New business, nothing. Reports of council members.
I don't have a report, but I have a regret.
Is this about center medians?
Well, my dilemma, this is a first for me in this days, but I am convinced that we need to pursue and research the possibility of increasing our sales tax for all the reasons we've heard tonight. And I didn't realize my nay vote was based on the fact we're talking about bringing in one person and hiring them. I still object to that. But I do believe that it would be a disservice to the city and our community if we leave with no prospect of raising revenue. So, Madam City Attorney, how do we remedy that? Can we bring this back for another I don't know what, we've extended my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order here.
Mean tonight?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to be
And-
gone for 2.5 weeks, so I don't care if it's
We
tonight
didn't,
or not.
we didn't take a vote. It just died because we couldn't get a motion on
There
it.
was a vote. There was a vote,
Oh,
and it was 3-2. And number 3 of that 3 is having second thoughts. And so I don't know how to handle that. I've never had to deal with this before.
Can we do it under new business?
no,
The-
it's not agendized.
You could move, you could make a motion to reconsider.
All right, so moved.
And those motions can be made by the person who was in the affirmative vote. So you would be able to move for a motion for reconsideration on the earlier
I
vote.
wasn't in the affirmative, though. I was in the negative.
I mean, you were the prevailing party. So
Yes.
Was I?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Oh, okay.
so the mayor and Councilmember Wong would not be able to move for reconsideration. But, I'm sorry, you were in the majority,
Okay.
so you would be able
Okay,
to
okay.
move
That makes
for
sense.
reconsideration.
All right, I move to reconsider.
I second.
No, second?
Oh,
Okay.
wait, can we second? Yeah.
So do we need a vote then to reopen it, or?
Well, you can have a discussion, and if anybody in the public wants to speak on it, but then you can vote on the motion to reconsider, and then you can vote again.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to reconsider. I think we can take a vote on that. Madam Clerk?
Okay. I will take a vote to reconsider the motion. Oh,
I have Jarb's screen, not city council screen.
may I take a look?
That's
There's
so-
too many meetings, so your
I have the
screen
same,
is
I have
timed
the same screen as Jar.
Well, obviously mine shouldn't have shut off right in the middle of it either, so I mean. May just have to take
These
verbal.
speakers aren't working either.
Oh, they're not?
Yeah,
I can take the vote by roll call.
yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Councilwoman Spencer Wong. Councilman Popescu.
No.
Councilman Rigsby.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly.
Aye.
Mayor Duper.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so we're back to reconsidering that original item. And what kind of motion do we want to make on it?
Since I've kind of created this mess, my overriding frustration is that we've waited to deal with. You don't wait to declare an emergency. An emergency is an emergency, and based on my understanding and review of the budget and discussion with staff, as well as the testimony that we've heard tonight, I am clear in my view that we have to look at generating revenue. Not that this is the only way to do it, but I think we're in a position where all options have to be on the table. And so therefore, I would speak in support of considering, or I should say directing staff to talk with with potential consultants and bring in a recommendation for the city council.
Holding.
When would you like that? Well,
Well,
here's the
no.
problem. You won't be here in 2 weeks.
And I'm okay with that.
No, the problem is you won't have the votes to move it forward in 2 weeks.
They have to already
You-
be
you have to
given
make the motion.
liability. They have to already be given leeway to hire a consultant.
And get the
Well,
process
let's make
started.
it
Okay.
clear, you
Okay.
aren't getting.
I'll accept that clarification of the motion
Okay, well,
as an amendment.
let me just clarify something. We are giving directions to JARB to hire someone tonight. That's what we're asking them. well, we need to be very clear about it. He's going to follow some rules about how he does it. And if he doesn't do it properly, it becomes moot. So just be aware of that.
Excuse me, if I may. I know he's not here to give his credentials or explain the method, but I would like to read what is in his proposed plan, and maybe that might answer some questions.
But I thought you said earlier that we're required to have 3 bids.
Yes, so this is an
So
example.
why are we talking about just one?
This is an example of what type of methodology this particular
Okay.
consultant, but we will still get more quotes.
Okay.
And the problem is that we don't have enough time to bring it back because we need to move forward on this. So if I may, I would like to read his methodology. Dual mode voter survey using a combination of online and telephone, cellular, and landline interviews. Respondent contact method, telephone calls, email invitations, and text invitations. Population and sample would be 250 to 300 likely November 2024 voters in the city of Loma Linda. The margin of sampling error is 6.2, give or take, for a sample of 250 interviews, and 5.7% for a sample of 300 interviews. And then he has an asterisk that says at 95% confidence level in 95 out of 100 cases.
And how much is that going to cost?
The quote is for 250 interviews at 23,500 and 300 interviews for 24,950.
But that may not be it because they're gonna consider 3 bids. So if
Correct.
they get a lower bidder, but the same methodology.
Yeah.
So we're saying we accept that methodology, but it may not be that polar specific.
Correct. We also have to look at qualifications.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, he is he has a PhD in sociology.
Yeah. Yes. But yes, all of that's great
Mhm.
along those same lines. But if you happen to get
Right.
2 other bidders and one is lower, then we consider
Correct.
obviously based on our policy.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Just another point of clarification. So he has authorized to spend $25,000. If he spends more than that, he needs to bring it back, and we need to go and authorize whatever we need to if we have to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to.
But
And how much time do they say it's going to take them?
It's on here, he's quoting between 5 and 8 weeks, but knowing that we're in a rush, we could try to push for 6 weeks.
And what I would add, which is not part of the motion, but again, based on my philosophy, is quality is the standard times the variable. If there are some issues that come up, then I'd like for the city manager to be able to work with the mayor and call a special meeting, and whoever can be here is here. And those of us that may not be here, we accept the decision of the council. So, my chief frustration is we've got ourselves in a time bind here. I don't like that. I like to anticipate things, but we are where we are. So I'd be supportive of that.
Is that, are we clear on the motion?
So motion is to authorize staff to move forward with the process to select a consultant to assist in the polling process.
Yeah, to conduct the polling.
To conduct the polling process.
Yeah.
I
And,
second.
and produce the responding results back to us.
Yes.
However that's worded.
Okay. I will take I'll call the vote. Councilwoman Spencer Wong,
Yes.
Councilman Popescu, Councilman Rigsby,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly,
Aye.
Mayor Duper.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other reports of council members? Nothing. Any reports of officers? Okay. We'll move on to, what's your preference, the housing or the housing authority? Any items to be added or deleted, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized housing authority item, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move forward with that consent calendar.
Move it.
First, and a second by Dr.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Councilwoman Spencer Wong.
Yes.
Councilman Popescu. Councilman Rigsby.
Yes.
Mayor Protem Daly.
Aye.
Mayor Duper.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. And reports of officers, reports of staff on that. Seeing none, we'll move on to the successor agency. Any items to be added or deleted, sir? Anyone from the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized item, please run forward. Seeing Milford not get up, he's thinking about that sandwich that's at home. We'll move on to the consent
Move it.
calendar, and that was quick.
Second.
And a second also.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Councilwoman Spencer Wong. Councilman Popescu. Councilman Rigsby.
Yes.
Mayor Protem Daly.
Aye.
Mayor Duper.
Yes,
Motion carried. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned. Mayor Duper.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, we'll adjourn. See you guys next one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just looking at the minutes from last meeting. I thought I was a delegate for SCAC. Am I missing something? It shows that Duper's the.
No, right below.